Welcome to the Channel Science documentary for sleep. I'm glad you're here, whether you're fully awake, a little tired, or already drifting. You don't need to settle into any particular position, and you don't need to hold on to anything I say. You may notice your breathing slowing on its own, your shoulders softening, or your attention wandering gently. All of that is welcome. Tonight, we're exploring some of the most relaxing facts about Earth, the planet beneath you, around you, quietly carrying you through space. As we move along together, we'll touch on familiar things and distant ones, oceans that shift without effort, clouds that form and fade, slow movements of land, air, and water that have been happening long before anyone noticed them. There will be mentions of continents, night skies, gravity, seasons, deep time, and ordinary ground. All of it is real science, but nothing here needs to be understood, remembered, or followed carefully. You might feel curious at moments, calm at others. You might notice your thoughts thinning out, or drifting sideways into memories or images that have nothing to do with Earth at all. If that happens, that's completely fine. You don't need to bring your attention back. The words can simply pass by, like weather. If at any point you feel like closing your eyes, or keeping them open, or letting this fade into the background, you're welcome to do that. I'll stay here, quietly describing this planet we share, for as long as you feel like listening. Astronomers and geophysicists have learned that Earth is not still in the way a table or a stone seems still. The ground beneath you is always moving, but it moves slowly enough to feel like rest. The continents drift at about the speed fingernails grow, a few centimeters a year, so slow that mountains can rise and wear down without ever needing to hurry. You may imagine the surface of the planet as solid and fixed, but beneath it, the mantle behaves more like thick, warm syrup over very long times. Heat from Earth's interior allows plates of crust to float and slide, nudging one another without sound. This motion is not trying to get anywhere. It has no destination. It simply continues, year after year, age after age. If this detail becomes fuzzy or slips away, that's all right. You don't need to picture the plates clearly. It's enough to know that Earth carries its changes gently, spreading them across millions of years so nothing has to rush. Even earthquakes are part of a system that releases tension gradually, most of the time unnoticed. You may notice how comforting it is to belong to something that changes so patiently, a planet that takes its time, a world that never asks you to keep up. Whether you're thinking about this or not, the motion continues quietly, and you're free to rest while it does. Earth's gravity is another presence that rarely asks for attention. It doesn't announce itself, it simply holds things close. The air stays wrapped around the planet because of it. Oceans remain pooled instead of drifting away. Your body stays gently connected to the ground beneath it. Gravity on Earth is steady and moderate, strong enough to keep rivers flowing downhill, but gentle enough that birds can lift themselves into the air and clouds can hover for hours. It gives weight to rain without forcing it to fall too fast. It allows trees to grow upward slowly, learning the shape of the wind. You might notice that you don't usually feel gravity directly. You feel chairs, floors, beds. Gravity works quietly through them, without asking you to notice, and if you stop thinking about it now, that's fine. It will continue doing its work either way. Scientists often describe gravity as a curve in space and time, caused by mass. Earth bends space just enough to create a feeling of home for things near it. Not too steep, not too shallow, just enough to hold water, air, and life in place. You don't have to remember any of that. You're already being held. The planet has been doing this for billions of years, and it won't mind if you drift. Earth's oceans cover more than 70% of the surface, and most of them are calm most of the time, even when storms appear on the surface. The deeper layers move slowly, in long, looping currents that take centuries to complete a single circuit. Some water now moving past coral reefs last saw the surface before humans existed. Ocean currents are driven by gentle differences, temperature, salinity, the slow turning of the planet. Warm water drifts toward the poles. Cool water sinks and returns. It's a continuous, unbroken motion that redistributes heat without effort. If you imagine this, it doesn't have to be vivid. It can be more like a feeling of depth, layers upon layers, each one quieter than the last. Below a few hundred meters, sunlight fades, and the water becomes still and dark, carrying only faint sounds. Marine scientists know that much of the ocean floor has never been seen directly by human eyes. It exists without witnesses, without needing to be named or mapped to continue being itself. That can feel reassuring. You don't need to travel there in your mind. It's enough to know that such quiet places exist on the same planet as you, balancing motion with rest, surface activity with deep calm. Earth's rotation is another steady rhythm that rarely asks to be noticed. The planet turns once every 24 hours, not because it needs to, but because it has been turning since its formation. There is no effort involved now. Momentum carries it forward. This rotation creates day and night, light and shadow, without requiring any decision. Every sunrise is simply the planet continuing what it was already doing. Every sunset is the same. You may notice that night arrives gradually. Light softens, colours shift, shadows stretch. The transition is slow enough for bodies and minds to follow without strain. Scientists measure Earth's spin with extreme precision, and even so, it changes slightly over time. The day lengthens by milliseconds as the moon gently pulls at the oceans. Nothing resists this. There is no correction needed. If your attention drifts here, that's natural. Rotation is repetitive by nature, round and round without commentary. You don't need to stay with it. The turning continues whether you notice it or not. Earth's atmosphere is thin compared to the size of the planet, but it's enough. A fragile-looking layer of gases held close by gravity, stretching upward into space and fading gradually rather than ending abruptly. There is no sharp edge where air stops. Most of the atmosphere sits close to the surface, cushioning temperature changes and softening sunlight. It scatters blue light during the day and reds and oranges at dusk. It slows meteors, turning potential impacts into brief streaks of light. You may find comfort in how ordinary air is, invisible, breathable, always there without being announced. Plants release oxygen quietly. Oceans exchange gases without sound. If this becomes background noise for you, that's fine. Air is used to being taken for granted. It has surrounded life for hundreds of millions of years, adjusting slowly, forgiving imbalance, restoring itself over time. You can let this fact fade. You can let all of this fade. Earth will continue holding its air, turning, drifting, and resting with or without your attention. Earth's magnetic field is something most people never feel and rarely think about. It doesn't press on the skin or announce itself with any sensation, and yet it surrounds the planet in a wide, invisible shape, stretching far out into space, moving gently as Earth turns. It comes from slow motion deep inside the planet, where liquid iron circulates in the core, generating electricity as it moves. This magnetic field deflects charged particles from the sun, guiding them around Earth instead of letting them strip the atmosphere away. Because of it, air remains close, water stays, life continues without needing to shield itself constantly from radiation. The field does this quietly, without perfect symmetry, without needing to be precise. Sometimes a small portion of those solar particles follow the magnetic lines down toward the poles. There, they meet the upper atmosphere and create auroras, slow curtains of light that ripple without urgency. They appear, shift, and dissolve, often without sound. You don't need to picture the field clearly. You don't need to imagine iron or electricity. It's enough to know that Earth has a kind of gentle boundary, not solid, not rigid, but responsive and alive, a soft protection, always on, never asking for thanks. If this slips away from you, that's okay. The magnetic field has reversed itself many times over Earth's history. Slowly and without drama, it adapts, it continues. You're free to rest inside it. Earth's seasons are another slow movement that unfolds without instruction. They come not from distance to the sun, but from the planet's gentle tilt about 23 degrees, held steady for thousands of years at a time. As Earth moves around the sun, that tilt changes how sunlight falls, stretching days longer or shorter, warming one hemisphere while the other cools. Nothing switches suddenly. Winter does not arrive all at once. Summer doesn't rush in. The changes are gradual enough that bodies can adjust without needing to notice every step. Plants respond quietly. They grow when light lingers. They rest when it fades. Animals follow patterns shaped by light and temperature, not by calendars or clocks. You may notice that even extreme seasonal changes are softened by air and water. Oceans store heat and release it slowly. Clouds reflect sunlight. Snow insulates the ground beneath it. Earth has many ways of easing transitions. If your mind wanders here, that fits the subject. Seasons themselves wander. They drift a little earlier or later over centuries, responding to tiny changes in orbit and tilt. There is no strict schedule to keep. You don't need to follow the cycle. It will continue whether or not you notice it, carrying warmth and coolness around the planet in a long, patient loop. Earth's surface is shaped by erosion far more often than by sudden force. Wind, water, and ice do most of the work, slowly wearing rock into sand, soil, and silt. A river doesn't need strength to carve a canyon, it needs time. Raindrops fall, soak in, evaporate, and fall again. Grains of sand move one at a time. Glaciers slide so slowly they appear frozen, yet they reshape entire landscapes as they pass. Geologists read Earth's history by looking at these quiet processes layered on top of one another. Sediment settles, pressure builds, rock forms. Then, over millions of years, it's exposed again, returning to air and light. You may feel comfort in how unhurried this is. Nothing is asked to change all at once. Everything is allowed to become something else gradually, without losing its place in the larger system. If this detail fades, let it. Erosion is repetitive by nature. The same actions, over and over, smoothing edges, softening sharpness. Earth seems to prefer this approach. Even now, while you rest, countless small changes are happening without consequence or urgency. The planet does not need you to witness them. They happen anyway. Earth's distance from the sun sits in a range that allows water to remain liquid on the surface, not frozen solid, not boiling away, just fluid enough to flow, pool, evaporate, and return as rain. This balance is not perfect or static. Temperatures shift, climates change, but water adapts, moving between states as needed, carrying heat and nutrients as it goes. Water absorbs warmth during the day and releases it slowly at night. It moderates extremes. It creates coastlines where temperature changes feel gentler, more forgiving. Scientists know that water's unusual properties like expanding when it freezes protect life. Ice floats, insulating lakes and oceans below, allowing liquid water to persist through cold periods. It's a small detail with a large effect. You don't need to remember why this happens. You've already experienced its outcome. Streams that keep flowing, rain that falls softly instead of all at once. If your thoughts drift like water here, that feels appropriate. Water rarely holds a shape for long, it adjusts, spreads, rests, and moves on. Earth's orbit around the Sun is stable and predictable, yet not rigid. It traces a gentle ellipse, repeating the same path year after year with slight variations that unfold over tens of thousands of years. There is no hurry in this motion. The planet doesn't cling tightly, and it doesn't drift away. Gravity and momentum balance each other naturally without correction. Earth simply continues forward, following the curve it has followed for a very long time. Astronomers can calculate this motion far into the future, not because it's forced, but because it's calm. Stable systems are often quiet ones. They don't require intervention. You might find it soothing to know that Earth's journey through space is shared by everything on it. There is no separate path for you to manage. You're already moving, already included. If this idea becomes distant or hazy, that's fine. Orbits are repetitive, round after round, without commentary or climax. Earth will continue circling the Sun tonight, tomorrow, and long after individual moments pass. You don't need to stay awake for that. The motion doesn't depend on your attention. Earth's crust is marked by lines that most people never see directly. Faults trace quiet boundaries where pieces of the surface meet, press, or slide past one another. They are not cracks waiting to break. Most of the time, they are simply places where motion is being shared slowly, almost patiently. Along many faults, the movement is so gradual that instruments are needed to detect it. Millimeters per year, less than the thickness of a fingernail. The land adjusts itself without sound, redistributing pressure over long stretches of time. Even where earthquakes do occur, they release only a small portion of the energy that has accumulated. The majority is eased away through countless tiny shifts that never reach awareness. Earth prefers many small adjustments to one sudden change. You may notice that this idea doesn't demand your focus. It doesn't build toward anything. That's appropriate. Faults don't aim for drama. They exist as part of an ongoing balance between heat, gravity, and motion. If this detail fades, let it. The surface beneath you is already managing itself. It has been doing so for billions of years, adapting its shape slowly, learning where to bend and where to hold. You don't need to feel secure because of this. You already are. The planet has many ways of releasing tension quietly, without involving you at all. Earth's soil is easy to overlook, yet it forms one of the most complex living systems on the planet. A single handful contains minerals, organic matter, water, air, and billions of microorganisms, bacteria, fungi, tiny invertebrates all working without coordination, yet forming something stable. Soil builds itself slowly, rock weathers into particles, plants grow, die, and return their material to the ground. Microbes transform what's left, making nutrients available again. This process takes place just beneath the surface, out of sight. Nothing announces it. Roots find their way through small spaces. Water moves downward and sideways, carrying dissolved minerals with it. You don't have to imagine the details. It's enough to know that the ground is not inert or empty. It's quietly active, responsive, and forgiving. If your thoughts wander here, that's fine. Soil is patient. It forms layer by layer, absorbing change without urgency. It doesn't mind being ignored for long periods of time. Even now, wherever you are, the ground beneath structures and streets continues its slow work, supporting, transforming, resting between changes. Earth's clouds are temporary by nature. They form, shift, thin, and disappear without needing to finish anything. Warm air rises, cools, and releases moisture. Tiny droplets gather, hover, and drift apart again. Some clouds stretch thin and high, made of ice crystals that scatter light gently. Others build upward slowly, then flatten and dissolve. Even the largest storms spend much of their existence simply moving water from one place to another. Meteorologists describe clouds with careful classifications, But the clouds themselves don't adhere to boundaries. They blur at the edges, they overlap, they transform as conditions change. You might notice how often clouds soften the sky. They reduce contrast, they filter sunlight, they make the atmosphere feel closer, more enclosed. If this part fades, that's expected. Clouds rarely hold attention for long. They pass overhead, leaving little trace. That transience can feel comforting. Earth's water cycle depends on this constant, gentle impermanence. Evaporation, condensation, and precipitation repeat without conclusion. No cloud needs to last. Another will form when conditions allow. Earth's axis doesn't point in a fixed direction forever. Over thousands of years, it slowly wobbles, tracing a small circle in space. This motion, called precession, changes which stars appear near the poles over long periods of time. The shift is extremely slow. A full cycle takes about 26,000 years. Human lifetimes pass without noticing any difference at all. Ancient skies are different from modern ones, and future skies will differ again. Yet the changes are gradual enough that no moment feels disrupted. The night sky evolves with the same patience as the surface below. You don't need to picture this movement. It's subtle by design. A slow adjustment layered on top of other slow adjustments, all unfolding without urgency. If your awareness drifts here, that fits the scale. Precession is not meant to be tracked moment by moment. It belongs to deep time, where individual attention doesn't matter. Earth doesn't require orientation to remain stable. It continues turning, tilted and wobbling slightly, maintaining rhythms that overlap and repeat gently. You're not required to keep track of where you are in any of this. You're already included. Earth's night is never completely dark, even far from cities. The sky holds faint light from stars, planets, and distant galaxies. Airglow, a soft emission from the upper atmosphere, creates a subtle brightness that never fully fades. This means the planet is always exchanging energy, even in shadow. Atoms release light as they settle into lower energy states. The process is quiet, continuous, and invisible to most eyes. Moonlight adds another layer, reflected sunlight, softened and scattered, changing shape night to night, sometimes bright enough to cast shadows, sometimes barely noticeable. You don't need to look up to be part of this. Nightlight reaches surfaces, trees, oceans, and ground alike. It's shared evenly, without preference. If this idea dissolves before it finishes forming, that's fine. Night itself encourages letting go of detail. Edges soften, contrast reduces. Earth does not insist on complete darkness or constant light. It allows gradients, transitions, in-between states. You're welcome to remain in one of those states now. Awake, drifting, or asleep, all are already accounted for in the way this planet moves. Earth's forests breathe at a pace that rarely aligns with human time. Trees draw in carbon dioxide and release oxygen slowly, leaf by leaf, cell by cell. This exchange doesn't surge or pause dramatically. It continues through day and night, through seasons, through years when no one is watching closely. Inside a forest, the air often feels cooler and softer. Leaves filter sunlight into fragments. Sound becomes less sharp, absorbed by layers of wood, bark, and soil. Even wind changes character, slowing as it moves through branches. Scientists know that forests create their own local climates. Moisture released by leaves becomes part of the air, increasing humidity and encouraging clouds to form. Roots stabilize soil, holding water in place. Nothing here happens quickly, and nothing needs to. You may notice that your attention doesn't want to linger on details. That's fine. Forests are built from repetition, one tree, then another, then many more. Individual parts don't demand focus. If this fades into the background, let it. Forests have existed for hundreds of millions of years, adapting quietly to changes in atmosphere and temperature. They don't require acknowledgement to continue being steady, living systems. Earth's deserts are often imagined as empty, but they are full of slow processes. Temperature shifts dramatically between day and night, expanding and contracting rock. Over time, this gentle stress breaks stone into smaller pieces. Sand moves with wind in small increments. Dunes migrate a few centimeters at a time, reshaping themselves without direction or goal, even in places that appear still. Motion is happening at a measured pace. Life in deserts adapts by conserving energy. Plants open their pores at night, animals rest for long stretches, moving only when necessary. Nothing rushes here. You don't need to picture heat or light vividly. It's enough to know that there are places on Earth where quiet persistence is the dominant pattern, survival through patience rather than speed. If your thoughts drift away, that fits. Deserts don't ask to be understood. They exist comfortably without observers, shaping themselves slowly, grain by grain. Earth's rivers rarely travel in straight lines. They curve, branch, slow down, and speed up in response to terrain. A river adjusts continuously, responding to obstacles without resistance. Water flows downhill, but it doesn't hurry. It pauses in pools, spreads across floodplains, sinks into ground, and returns again. This flexibility allows rivers to last for thousands or millions of years. Sediment carried by rivers settles gradually, forming deltas and fertile plains. Each grain finds its place over time. Nothing needs to arrive all at once. If this image softens or blurs, that's okay. Rivers are repetitive by nature. Flow, pause, turn, repeat. Even now, countless rivers move quietly across the planet, reshaping land without effort. They don't need attention. They simply continue. Earth's mountains are often associated with height and drama, but their existence is mostly defined by patience. They rise slowly as tectonic plates press together, and they wear down just as slowly through erosion. Wind, water, and ice reduce sharp peaks over time, rounding them into gentler shapes. A mountain range spends far more time being worn away than being built. Geologists can trace this long balance by reading layers of rock. Uplift and erosion overlap, cancelling urgency. Nothing remains extreme for long. You may not want to hold on to this. That's fine. Mountains don't insist on being impressive. They persist whether noticed or not. Their calm presence reflects a broader truth of Earth, that even the largest features are shaped by small, repeated actions over immense spans of time. Earth's polar ice moves even when it appears frozen. Glaciers flow under their own weight, inches or feet per day, imperceptibly slow. They carry records of ancient air trapped in bubbles, preserving moments from thousands of years ago. Ice reflects sunlight, cooling the planet gently. It stores fresh water and releases it gradually as temperatures change. Nothing about this system is sudden. Scientists drill deep into ice sheets to read climate history, but the ice itself doesn't care if it's studied. It responds only to temperature, gravity, and time. If your awareness drifts here, let it. Ice encourages stillness. It moves without sound, reshaping landscapes quietly. Earth holds these slow, cooling places alongside warm oceans and forests, balancing extremes through steady processes. You don't need to stay awake to appreciate that. The balance continues either way. Earth's coastlines are always in the process of becoming something else. They look stable when seen in a moment, but they are shaped by countless small interactions between land and water. Waves arrive, spread, and retreat. Tides lift and lower the ocean twice a day, nudged by the moon without urgency. Most of the time, waves are not dramatic. They roll in with familiar timing, rearranging sand grain by grain. A beach today is never quite the same as it was yesterday, yet it feels unchanged. That balance between movement and familiarity is part of what makes coastlines feel restful. Erosion here is gentle more often than not. Cliffs soften slowly, pebbles become smooth through repeated contact. Nothing needs to finish becoming its final form. Scientists describe coasts as dynamic systems, always adjusting to energy from wind and gravity, but you don't need the language. You've likely felt it already, the sense that the edge between land and sea is flexible, forgiving. If your attention wanders here, that's fine. The shoreline doesn't hold a single shape for long. It shifts while remaining recognizable, allowing change without disruption. Earth seems comfortable with edges that move. It doesn't insist on clear boundaries. It allows overlap, blending, transition. You're welcome to rest in that idea, or let it pass by. Earth's rocks tell stories without needing to speak. Igneous rock cools slowly from molten material deep below the surface. Sedimentary rock forms as particles settle, layer by layer. Metamorphic rock changes under pressure and heat, becoming something new without losing its substance. This rock cycle has no starting point and no end. Material moves from one form to another, sometimes over billions of years. Stone melts, cools, erodes, compresses, and transforms again. Most of this happens far beyond awareness. A single grain of sand may once have been a part of a mountain, then part of a seabed, then lifted again. There's no hurry for it to arrive anywhere. If you find this hard to follow, that's okay. Rock time isn't meant to be tracked. It unfolds at a pace where individual moments don't matter. Earth doesn't rush its materials. It allows them to change shape slowly, repeatedly, without loss. Even the most solid things here are temporary in a calm, unthreatening way. You don't need to remember this. The ground beneath you already knows how to be patient. Earth's insects outnumber humans by an enormous margin, and most of them live quietly. They pollinate plants, recycle organic material, aerate soil, and disappear without being noticed. Their lives are brief, but their presence is constant. Bees move from flower to flower without needing to understand ecosystems. Ants build and rebuild structures that adapt easily to disturbance. Decomposers return fallen leaves and wood to the soil, piece by piece. Entomologists study these systems carefully, but the insects themselves don't coordinate or plan. Simple actions, repeated countless times, create stability. If thinking about this feels distant or abstract, that's fine. These processes don't depend on awareness. They happen underfoot, behind walls, beneath leaves. Earth supports this quiet labor without ceremony. It provides space, temperature ranges, and chemical balance that allow small lives to do large work. You don't need to hold this idea. You're already part of a planet where support doesn't require recognition and contribution doesn't require effort. Earth's caves form in darkness, often unnoticed for thousands or millions of years. Water seeps through rock, dissolving minerals slowly, expanding tiny cracks into open chambers. Drop by drop, space appears. Inside caves, temperatures remain remarkably stable. Sound behaves differently. Time feels less defined. Stalactites and stalagmites grow at rates measured in millimeters per century. Geologists read cave formations like quiet clocks, recording past rainfall and climate conditions. But the caves themselves don't mark time. They simply continue forming. If you imagine this, it doesn't need to be detailed. It can be more like a sense of shelter, an interior space that doesn't rush or demand. Earth holds many such spaces underground, underwater, unseen, places that exist without being useful or impressive. If your thoughts fade here, let them. Caves are comfortable with absence. They remain unchanged by attention. Earth's grasslands cover wide areas and move gently with wind. Grasses grow from their base, allowing them to bend without breaking. Fire passes through quickly, and growth resumes. These ecosystems are resilient by design. They don't depend on permanence. They recover through repetition. Large herds once moved across these plains, shaping them through grazing. Now, grasses continue their cycles regardless, responding to rain and sunlight. The simplicity of grass can feel calming. No towering structures, no sharp edges, just continuous growth, pause, and return. If this feels unremarkable, that's appropriate. Grasslands don't ask for admiration. They function through quiet consistency. Earth includes many systems like this, not dramatic, not rare, but steady. You're free to notice them, or not. They will continue either way, offering balance without expectation. Earth's rain does not fall all at once. It forms slowly, gathering in clouds as invisible vapor condenses into droplets too small to feel. Only when those droplets grow heavy enough do they begin to descend, often gently, sometimes barely noticeable. Most rainfall is quiet. It lands on leaves, rooftops, soil, water, each surface softening its arrival in a different way. Much of it never reaches rivers directly. It seeps into the ground, pauses in roots, evaporates again before traveling very far. Hydrologists know that rain follows many paths. Some returns quickly to the air, some moves slowly underground, taking months or years to emerge elsewhere. A portion becomes part of glaciers or deep aquifers, resting for much longer spans of time. You don't need to follow these routes, rain doesn't either. It responds only to gravity, temperature, and surfaces, finding its way without intention. If this fades into background sound for you, that's fitting. Rain is familiar. It doesn't insist on attention. It arrives, nourishes, and moves on. Earth has been cycling water this way since long before there were names for weather. The process continues whether or not it's noticed, offering renewal without urgency. Earth's lakes often appear still, especially from the shore. Their surfaces may reflect sky and trees so clearly that depth becomes hard to judge. But below that calm surface, water layers move slowly, guided by temperature and density. In many lakes, warmer water rests near the top in summer, cooler water below. As seasons change, these layers gently mix, redistributing oxygen and nutrients. Nothing abrupt, nothing forced. Sediment settles gradually at the bottom, recording quiet changes over time. Leaves fall in, particles sink. Year after year, a thin layer is added, almost too small to notice. Limnologists study these patterns to understand climate history, but the lakes themselves don't respond to being studied. They continue holding water, reflecting light, and supporting life with minimal variation. If this feels uneventful, that's the point. Lakes specialize in holding. They collect rain, slow rivers, moderate temperature, and then release water again. You don't need to stay with this image. A lake doesn't mind being glanced at briefly or forgotten entirely. It remains, steady and contained. Either way, Earth's winds are created by simple differences: warm air rising, cool air settling. There is no central source deciding directional strength. Air moves because it can, filling spaces left by changing temperature. Most winds are light. They brush past surfaces, bend grasses, ripple water, and then move on. Even stronger winds are temporary, part of a larger balance that redistributes heat. Atmospheric scientists map wind patterns across the globe, tracing trade winds, jet streams, and seasonal flows. These patterns shift gently over time, responding to oceans, mountains, and rotation. You may notice that wind rarely asks for attention unless it becomes loud. Most of the time, it's background motion present, functional, and easily ignored. If your thoughts drift like air here, that's fine. Wind doesn't hold form. It passes through, changes shape, and leaves no trace of where it's been. Earth uses wind to move seeds, moisture, and warmth without effort. The motion continues even when it's not felt, balancing the planet quietly. Earth's moon influences the planet in ways that are steady and predictable. Its gravity pulls on Earth's oceans, creating tides that rise and fall in slow cycles. High tide becomes low tide, and then returns again. These movements are gentle. The ocean doesn't rush to comply. It responds gradually, lifting and settling over hours. Tides help mix ocean waters, distributing nutrients and oxygen. They shape coastlines and estuaries without urgency, repeating the same motions thousands of times a year. Astronomers can predict tides far into the future because the system is calm and stable. Nothing surprising is required for it to continue. You don't need to remember the timing. Tides don't depend on awareness. They will arrive and recede whether or not anyone is watching. If this becomes hazy, let it. The moon has been guiding water this way for billions of years. It doesn't mind if you rest while it does. Earth's living systems are interconnected, but not fragile in the way that word often suggests. They bend, adjust, and recover through feedback loops that operate slowly and continuously. When one population grows, others respond. When conditions shift, life redistributes itself. There is no single point of control, no requirement for perfection. Ecologists describe resilience as the ability to absorb change without losing function. Earth's ecosystems specialize in this. They allow variation. They tolerate imbalance for a time. You don't need to hold this complexity in mind. Life here doesn't ask for understanding. It unfolds through countless small interactions, each one simple on its own. If your awareness drifts now, that's natural. Systems like these don't need to be followed closely to work. Earth has carried life through ice ages, warm periods, quiet spans, and turbulent ones. It does so through patience rather than precision. You're allowed to rest inside that patience, whether you're listening closely, loosely, or not at all. The planet continues its slow, steady work holding, adjusting and moving gently forward. Earth's temperature does not remain fixed from moment to moment. It shifts gently through cycles that smooth out extremes rather than amplify them. Day warms the surface, night releases that warmth back into the air. Oceans absorb heat slowly and give it back just as slowly, preventing sudden changes. Most places on Earth experience this quiet moderation. Even deserts cool at night. Even cold regions warm briefly under the sun. The planet rarely allows conditions to remain sharp for long. Scientists describe this as thermal inertia, the tendency of large systems to resist rapid temperature change. Water, rock, and air all contribute, storing energy and releasing it gradually. Nothing snaps. Nothing jolts. You don't need to follow the physics. You felt the effect already: evenings that cool gradually, mornings that warm without urgency. Earth seems to prefer transitions that bodies can follow without effort. If this idea drifts away, let it. Temperature cycles are repetitive by nature. They repeat so often that they fade into the background. The planet continues balancing warmth and coolness whether or not it's noticed. You're free to rest inside that balance. Earth's rivers eventually meet the sea, but they don't hurry toward that meeting. Along the way, they branch, pause, flood, retreat, and change course. They respond to terrain without resistance, adjusting shape instead of forcing it. Floodplains form as rivers overflow gently, depositing nutrients across wide areas. This spreading out reduces force. Energy is dispersed rather than concentrated. Hydrologists observe that rivers rarely carve the shortest path. They prefer curves. Meanders lengthen the journey, slowing the flow and reducing strain on the landscape. You may notice that this doesn't feel like a story with an ending. That's fitting. Rivers don't aim to arrive, they aim to continue. If your thoughts wander here, that mirrors the subject. Rivers wander too. They leave behind traces, then move on without attachment. Earth allows this kind of movement everywhere progress without urgency, motion without pressure. You don't need to stay alert to be part of it. Earth's night sky appears stable, but it changes slowly over time. Stars drift relative to one another as the sun moves through the galaxy. The patterns people recognize today were slightly different thousands of years ago. These changes are so slow that they don't disrupt familiarity. Constellations remain recognizable across many generations. Shift happens gently enough to be absorbed without notice. Astronomers measure this motion precisely, but the sky itself doesn't respond to being measured. It continues its gradual rearrangement, one fraction of a degree at a time. You don't need to visualize stars clearly. It's enough to know that even the sky participates in patience. Nothing above rushes. If this becomes indistinct, that's natural. The night sky often invites soft focus. Edges blur. Distance feels undefined. Earth moves through this changing sky quietly, carrying oceans, forests, and resting minds along with it. No effort is required from you. Earth's plants follow light rather than clocks. They grow toward brightness, adjust leaf angles, open and close pores in response to day and night. This responsiveness happens automatically, without decision. Roots extend slowly, sensing moisture and nutrients. Growth happens incrementally, cell by cell. Nothing leaps forward. Botanists describe this as tropism growth guided by environmental cues, but the plants don't need the term, they simply respond. You might notice how calming it is that life here doesn't need to plan. It reacts, adapts, and rests when conditions aren't right. No effort is wasted. If your attention slips here, that's fine. Plants don't demand observation. They continue growing whether watched or not. Earth supports this quiet responsiveness everywhere on forest floors, in cracks of pavement, across fields and hillsides. Growth is allowed to be slow. Earth's passage through time is marked by layers rather than moments. Ice cores, sediment, tree rings all record change in thin, repeated bands. No single layer matters much on its own. Each layer is complete. Each one tells part of a story without needing to carry the whole thing. Together, they form a record that stretches far beyond individual awareness. Geoscientists read these layers carefully, but the planet doesn't archive itself intentionally. Layers form because processes repeat. Snow falls, sediment settles, trees grow. You don't need to remember this. It's already reflected in the ground beneath you. Time here accumulates gently, without pressure to perform. If this thought fades, let it. Earth is comfortable with partial records. It doesn't insist on being fully known. The planet continues laying down moments, one after another, calm and complete. You don't need to stay awake to witness them. They will be there regardless, holding time softly while you rest. Earth's valleys are shaped more by absence than by force. They exist where material has been gently removed, carried away by water, ice, or gravity over long periods of time. A valley is not pushed into being. It is revealed slowly as what once filled it is invited elsewhere. Rivers widen their paths patiently. Glaciers ease their weight downhill, smoothing and opening space. Even dry valleys tell stories of ancient flows that passed through without hurry and then moved on. You may notice how valleys tend to feel open rather than dramatic. They hold space. They collect light differently, letting shadows stretch and settle. They feel like places where motion slows naturally. Geologists describe valleys as records of persistence rather than power. Nothing sudden is required to form them. Only repetition, only time. If this idea becomes indistinct, that's fine. Valleys themselves don't stand out sharply from their surroundings. They blend, cradle, and allow passage. Earth seems to make room wherever it can. It removes just enough, slowly enough, to create space without strain. You're welcome to rest in that image or let it fade as easily as a slope into low ground. Earth's soundscape is quieter than we often imagine. Most of the planet is not loud. Wind across open land, water moving underground, leaves shifting against one another. These sounds exist at low volume, continuous and unremarkable. Even in the oceans, sound travels gently most of the time. Whales communicate across vast distances with low-frequency calls that pass through water without disturbance. Currents hum softly as they move past rock and coral. Seismologists record vibrations constantly, but most of them are tiny background tremors caused by waves, weather, and distant movement. The planet is always murmuring, rarely shouting. You don't need to listen closely. This is not an invitation to notice sound. It's simply an acknowledgement that Earth is not silent, but it is calm. If your attention drifts away from this, that fits. Background sound is meant to be unfocused. It supports rather than demands. Earth holds space for quiet continuity. It doesn't insist on stillness, but it doesn't rush noise either. You're free to let this become part of the background of rest. Earth's cliffs and steep slopes look dramatic, yet their existence depends on balance. Rock faces stand where strength and erosion meet in temporary agreement. Gravity pulls downward, material resists until it doesn't. Small fragments loosen first, pebbles fall, dust shifts. Large changes are rare and usually preceded by countless smaller ones. Geomorphologists know that steep landscapes are short-lived in geological terms. They soften over time, breaking into gentler forms that distribute weight more evenly. Sharpness relaxes. You don't need to picture falling rock. You don't need to imagine danger. Most cliffs spend their lives simply being held in place, stable for long spans. If this detail dissolves before it finishes forming, that's okay. Cliffs themselves are transitional. They exist between phases not permanent, not urgent. Earth allows even its most striking features to be temporary. Nothing is required to stay sharp forever. That permission extends everywhere, quietly. Earth's planes stretch outward without insisting on being noticed. They don't rise or fall dramatically. They allow movement without interruption. Plains often form where sediment settles evenly over long periods, carried by rivers, spread by floods, laid down by ancient seas. Layer upon layer creates flatness through repetition rather than intention. These wide areas moderate climate. Air moves freely. Temperature changes feel less abrupt. Light travels uninterrupted until it meets the horizon. You may notice that plains are easy to forget. They don't demand awe. They don't frame themselves as destinations. They simply exist, offering space. If your thoughts wander here, let them. Plains are made for wandering visually, mentally, without direction. Earth includes many regions like this, where nothing stands out sharply. Balance is achieved through evenness rather than contrast. You're allowed to drift in such spaces, without needing to orient yourself. Earth's underground water moves slowly through rock and soil, often unseen for centuries. Rain filters downward, passing through pores and fractures, collecting in aquifers that store water quietly. This movement is measured in meters per year, sometimes less. Water does not rush underground. It spreads, pauses, and follows paths shaped long ago. Hydrogeologists study these flows to understand water supply, but the water itself is indifferent to use. It moves according to pressure and gravity, not demand. You don't need to imagine tunnels or chambers. Most groundwater moves through tiny spaces, barely wide enough to notice. The scale is small, the patience is large. If this fades from awareness, that's natural. Underground processes specialize in being unnoticed. They support surface life without asking for attention. Earth holds vast reserves of quiet movement beneath you right now. Water traveling without sound, without schedule. You're free to rest above it. knowing it continues gently. Earth's horizon is a curve, though it often appears flat. This curvature is subtle, too large to notice in a single glance. It reveals itself slowly, across distance rather than moment. Sailors once learned to trust this curve, watching ships disappear hull first as they moved away. The planet doesn't display its shape dramatically. It allows understanding to emerge gradually. Astronomers and surveyors measure curvature precisely, but most lives unfold without needing that knowledge. The ground feels level, movement feels straightforward. You don't need to hold on to this fact. It doesn't change how you rest or breathe. It simply adds softness to the idea of edges. If your mind drifts here, that's fine. Curves are easier to release than corners. They don't insist on boundaries. Earth does not end abruptly anywhere. Even where land meets sky, the transition is gradual. You're allowed to let that gentleness carry you, whether you remain awake, drifting, or somewhere in between. Earth's volcanoes spend most of their existence doing very little at all. They're often imagined as constant threats, but the reality is quieter. Magma moves slowly beneath the surface, sometimes pausing for centuries before finding a new path. Most volcanoes rest far longer than they erupt. When heat rises through rock, it does so gradually, warming surrounding material and releasing gases in small amounts. Steam escapes, minerals crystallize, pressure redistributes itself without spectacle. Volcanologists monitor these systems carefully, yet the volcanoes themselves are unhurried. They respond only to temperature, chemistry, and gravity. There is no intention, no urgency. You don't need to picture fire or movement. It's enough to know that Earth has ways of releasing internal heat that are mostly calm and mostly unseen. Energy finds outlets without needing to break the surface. If this detail fades before it settles, that's fine. Volcanoes are patient. They exist as part of a long conversation between deep heat and cooler crust, a conversation that unfolds quietly over time. Earth carries its warmth inside, contained and moderated. You're not required to stay alert to it. The balance continues whether or not it's noticed. Earth's rivers of air, the jet streams, circle the planet high above the surface. They move swiftly compared to ground winds, yet their paths are smooth and looping rather than sharp. They form where temperature differences meet, tracing boundaries gently. These air currents guide weather systems without deciding outcomes. Storms follow curves rather than straight lines. Cold and warm air blend gradually instead of colliding abruptly. Meteorologists track jet streams carefully, but the air itself flows without awareness of maps or models. It responds only to rotation, heat, and pressure. You don't need to imagine altitude or speed. You can think of this as another layer of motion, one more slow, continuous adjustment happening above everyday experience. If your thoughts drift upward and then away, that fits. High-altitude processes rarely demand attention. They shape conditions quietly, then move on. Earth layers its movement's surface, sky, and deep interior so no single change needs to be overwhelming. Everything is distributed. Nothing insists on being felt all at once. Earth's islands often form in isolation, separated by water that slows exchange. Over time, this separation allows life to adapt gently to local conditions. Species change slowly, responding to wind, waves, and available resources. Biologists study island ecosystems to understand evolution, but the changes themselves are subtle. A beak becomes slightly longer, a leaf grows thicker. Generations pass without noticing the shift. Isolation here is not loneliness. It is a quiet opportunity for variation. Nothing needs to compete urgently. Adaptation unfolds through patience. You don't need to hold on to this idea. Island time is long and forgiving. It doesn't align with short attention spans. If this fades, let it. Earth supports difference without forcing it, allowing many forms of life to exist side by side, shaped by their surroundings. The planet seems comfortable with diversity that emerges slowly. There is room for many ways of being, none of them hurried. Earth's coral reefs grow millimeter by millimeter, built by countless tiny organisms working without coordination. Each coral polyp adds a thin layer of calcium carbonate, then rests. Over centuries, structures large enough to be seen from space take shape. Reefs form in warm, shallow water where light reaches easily. They don't rush to grow downward or outward. They respond to conditions, expanding when possible, pausing when not. Marine scientists often describe reefs as busy, but the busyness is gentle. Fish move in unhurried patterns. Water circulates slowly through branching forms. You don't need to imagine colour or motion vividly. It's enough to know that some of Earth's largest living structures are built almost imperceptibly, through repetition rather than effort. If this detail becomes indistinct, that's natural. Reef growth is subtle by design. It accumulates quietly, layer after layer. Earth allows complexity to arise without speed. It supports creation that happens so slowly it feels like rest. Earth's shadows are never fixed. As the planet turns, light angles shift and shadows lengthen, shorten, or disappear entirely. This movement is so steady that it rarely calls attention to itself. Mountains cast long shadows in early morning and evening. At midday, those shadows retreat. Nothing is lost. Nothing is gained. Photons travel from the sun for minutes before reaching Earth, then scatter through air, water, and leaves. Light is softened at every step, filtered and diffused. You don't need to watch this happen. Shadows don't need witnesses. They mark time without sound or instruction. If your awareness drifts here, that's fitting. Shadows about absence rather than presence. It's easy to let go of. Earth uses light and dark together, blending them gently across hours and landscapes. There is no requirement to stay in brightness or to avoid dimness. You're welcome to remain wherever you are now, awake, drifting, or nearly asleep. The planet continues turning, casting and releasing shadows with quiet consistency, holding space for rest without asking anything in return. Earth's peatlands form slowly, in places where water lingers and movement is minimal. Plants grow, die, and fall into saturated ground where oxygen is scarce. Instead of fully decomposing, their remains accumulate, compressing gently over centuries into layers of peat. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is rushed. These landscapes often feel quiet and expansive. Water reflects sky. Grasses and mosses soften sound. Footsteps, if there are any, feel muted. Scientists know peatlands store vast amounts of carbon, locked away simply because conditions allow things to rest instead of break down. Cool temperatures, still water, time. You don't need to remember this mechanism. It's enough to know that Earth has places designed for holding, not moving forward, not transforming quickly, just keeping things safely suspended. If your attention drifts here, that's appropriate. Peatlands are not sharp landscapes. They blur edges, slow motion, and absorb energy. Earth allows some processes to pause almost entirely. It makes room for slowness without requiring explanation. You're welcome to let this idea settle or dissolve just as gently. Earth's limestone landscapes are shaped by water that barely feels like it's doing anything at all. Rain absorbs carbon dioxide from air and soil, becoming slightly acidic. As it passes through rock, it dissolves tiny amounts of calcium carbonate, grain by grain. Over long periods, this creates caves, sinkholes, and smooth, rounded surfaces. The changes are invisible moment to moment. Nothing announces itself. Karst regions often feel spacious and calm. Water disappears underground, travelling quietly through unseen channels before returning elsewhere. Surface and depth stay connected without interruption. Geochemists can trace these flows, but the water itself is unconcerned with paths or destinations. It moves where chemistry and gravity allow. You don't need to picture underground rivers or chambers. Most of this movement happens through microscopic spaces. The scale is small, the patience is vast. If this thought fades before it finishes forming, that's fine. Limestone landscapes take millions of years to reveal themselves. They don't need attention to continue becoming what they are. Earth's wetlands shift between land and water without insisting on a single identity. Sometimes flooded, sometimes dry, always responsive. Plants here tolerate change easily. They grow flexible stems. They exchange gases through specialized tissues. Animals pass through seasonally, resting, feeding, and moving on. Ecologists describe wetlands as buffers, places that absorb excess water, filter sediment, and soften floods. But the wetland itself doesn't prepare or plan, it simply responds. You may notice how calming it is that nothing here needs to be fixed. Variation is expected, edges move. If your awareness wanders now, let it. Wetlands are transitional by nature. They exist comfortably between states. Earth uses these in-between places generously. They reduce strain on surrounding systems by accepting fluctuation without resistance. You're allowed to rest in that idea or let it drift away like water through reeds. Earth's fossil record is incomplete by design. Only a small fraction of organisms ever become fossils, preserved by rare combinations of burial, chemistry, and time. Most life leaves no lasting trace. Sediment covers remains gently. Minerals replace organic material slowly. What survives is partial, fragmented, softened. Paleontologists work carefully with these pieces, but the planet does not attempt to remember everything. It keeps some impressions. It lets others fade entirely. You don't need to find meaning in what's preserved or what's lost. Earth does not curate its history. It allows it to form unevenly. If this becomes hazy, that's appropriate. The past itself is hazy. Details blur with distance. Earth seems comfortable with forgetting. It doesn't require completeness to continue. That permission extends to you as well. Earth's snowpack accumulates quietly over months, layer upon layer. Each snowfall rests atop the last, compressing gently under its own weight. Air remains trapped between crystals, insulating the ground below. As seasons shift, snow melts gradually, releasing water into soil and streams at a measured pace. This slow release reduces flooding and supports ecosystems through drier periods. Hydrologists study snowpack carefully, but the snow itself responds only to temperature and gravity. It forms when conditions allow. It melts when they change. You don't need to imagine cold or brightness. You can think instead of storage water held safely, patiently, until it's needed elsewhere. If this detail fades, let it. Snow is transient by nature. It arrives, rests, and leaves without attachment. Earth includes many such temporary states, not permanent, not urgent, simply part of a longer rhythm. Earth's plateaus stretch outward at elevation, offering stability rather than drama. They form where uplift occurs evenly, or where erosion removes surrounding material first. The result is flatness held high. These regions often experience wide skies and steady winds. Temperature changes feel gradual. Horizons extend without interruption. Geologists know plateaus represent balance between forces lifting land and forces wearing it down. Neither dominates completely. You don't need to imagine height. You can think of steadiness instead, a surface that doesn't tilt or pull attention. If your thoughts wander here, that fits. Plateaus are not directional landscapes. They don't suggest movement toward anything. Earth creates places like this where rest feels built into the shape of the land. No ascent required, no descent demanded. You're free to remain where you are now, awake, drifting, or somewhere in between while the planet continues shaping itself slowly. evenly, and without expectation. Earth's shorelines beneath the water are shaped by motion that never fully stops. Even when the sea looks calm from above, waves continue traveling below the surface, redistributing energy gently. Sand ripples form and fade, sediment settles, then lifts again, never quite fixing itself in place. Marine geologists study these underwater landscapes with sonar, mapping features that change slowly but continuously. Nothing abrupt is required. A shift in current, a change in tide. The seafloor adjusts without sound. Most of this happens far beyond human notice. There is no edge to mark where movement ends. Water touches rock, pauses, and moves on. You don't need to imagine depth or darkness. It's enough to know that beneath familiar coastlines, Earth continues its habit of small, repeated adjustments. No tension accumulates, no attention is needed. If this thought fades, let it. The ocean floor has always been comfortable with being unseen. It continues forming quietly, supporting everything above it without asking to be acknowledged. Earth's daylight is not uniform across the surface. Light arrives at different angles depending on latitude, season, and time of day. This variation softens contrasts and spreads warmth gradually. Near the equator, sunlight falls more directly. Closer to the poles, it stretches across the surface, lingering longer in summer and retreating slowly in winter. No place receives all the light at once. Atmospheric scientists describe how air scatters sunlight, diffusing brightness so shadows soften and edges blur. The sky itself participates in calming intensity. You don't need to track where the sun is or how high it sits. Your body already responds naturally to these changes. Alertness rises and falls without instruction. If this becomes indistinct, that's fine. Daylight repeats every day. Familiar patterns rarely demand focus. Earth distributes light carefully, never flooding everything equally. It allows gradients, pauses, and gentle transitions. You're welcome to drift inside those changes. Earth's minerals crystallize slowly as conditions allow. Atoms arrange themselves into repeating patterns, guided by temperature, pressure, and chemistry. No choices involved. Order emerges quietly. Crystals grow one layer at a time, sometimes over thousands of years. If conditions shift, growth pauses without consequence. Nothing is forced to complete itself. Geochemists study these structures to understand Earth's history, but the minerals themselves simply respond. They form when space opens, they rest when it closes. You don't need to picture sharp angles or sparkling surfaces. Most crystals remain embedded in rock, unseen and undisturbed. If this detail dissolves, that's natural. Crystallization is subtle by nature. It rewards patience rather than attention. Earth allows structure to arise without urgency. Even order here is gentle, gradual, and uninsistent. Earth's high-altitude plateaus of air regions of stable pressure sit quietly above weather systems. These zones change slowly, guiding movement below without directly participating in it. Pilots and meteorologists are aware of them, but most lives pass beneath without noticing. Air rises, sinks, and circulates within these broader patterns. The atmosphere layers itself naturally. Warm air floats. Cool air settles. Balance emerges through simple physical tendencies. You don't need to imagine height or motion. It's enough to know that above everyday experience, calm structures exist that reduce chaos below. If your awareness drifts upward and then away, that's fine. Upper air processes are meant to be background. Earth spreads activity across layers so no single level carries everything. Support comes from above and below, quietly shared. Earth's long-term climate rhythms unfold over tens of thousands of years. Ice ages advance and retreat. Sea levels rise and fall. Forests expand and contract. These changes are slow enough that life adapts incrementally. Migration replaces urgency. Adjustment replaces force. Paleoclimatologists read these patterns in ice, sediment, and pollen, but the planet itself does not record with intention. Rhythms emerge because conditions repeat. You don't need to hold these timescales in mind. They are too large to follow moment by moment. They belong to a slower awareness. If this feels distant, that's appropriate. Deep rhythms are meant to be felt indirectly, as steadiness rather than detail. Earth has carried life through vast changes by allowing time to stretch. Nothing demands immediate resolution. You're free to rest inside that slowness, awake, drifting, or asleep while the planet continues its quiet cycles, patient and complete, whether or not anyone is listening. Earth's cliffs along rivers and coasts are often created not by sudden breaks, but by steady undercutting. Water moves against stone again and again, removing the smallest particles first. What remains stands for a long time, held in balance, before changing shape quietly. Most of a cliff's life is spent simply standing. Rain darkens its surface and dries again. Plants find narrow places to root. Birds rest briefly and move on. Geologists know that collapse, when it happens, is only one brief moment in a much longer process. The preparation takes thousands of years. Tiny changes accumulate, unnoticed. You don't need to imagine falling rock or noise. Most of the time, nothing dramatic occurs. The cliff adjusts internally, redistributing weight until the balance shifts gently. If this detail fades, that's fine. Cliffs themselves are transitional. They hold for a while, then release, then soften into slopes. Earth does not insist on permanence. Even what looks firm is allowed to change when the time is right. You're welcome to rest with that permission, or let it drift past without holding on. Earth's oceans are layered not only by depth, but by temperature and salinity. These layers slide past one another slowly, rarely mixing all at once. Warm water floats, cooler, denser water sinks. This layering creates a sense of quiet separation. Surface waves move freely, while deeper water remains largely undisturbed, at great depths. Motion is measured in centuries. Oceanographers describe this as stratification, but the ocean itself doesn't maintain it intentionally. It arises naturally from simple physical differences. You don't need to picture darkness or pressure. It's enough to know that beneath visible motion, there are vast regions of stillness. Movement above does not disturb what rests below. If your attention drifts downward and then away, that fits. Deep water is not meant to be visualized clearly. It exists comfortably beyond focus. Earth seems to favor this kind of layering activity near the surface, calm held beneath, support without interference. You're allowed to mirror that now, letting thoughts move lightly while something steadier rests underneath. Earth's lichens grow where little else can, on bare rock, on old bark, in cold, dry, or exposed places. They are partnerships between fungi and algae, living together without hierarchy. One provides structure, the other provides energy from light. Neither rushes. Lichens grow millimeters per year, sometimes less. Their presence marks time more reliably than clocks in some environments. A patch of lichen can be decades old without appearing to change. Biologists study them to understand air quality and climate, but lichens themselves respond only to light, moisture, and temperature. They pause during harsh conditions and resume when it's safe. You don't need to imagine color or texture. You can think instead of patience life that does not compete for space, but occupies what is available quietly. If this idea fades, that's fine. Lichens are comfortable being overlooked. They continue existing without expectation. Earth allows life to persist even where conditions are sparse. It supports cooperation that unfolds slowly, without effort or urgency. Earth's river deltas form where movement finally slows enough for water to let go of what it carries. Sediment settles, channels branch, land appears gradually. Each grain finds a place when energy dissipates. Nothing is arranged, nothing is planned. Deltas shift constantly. New channels open, old ones fill in. The shape changes without losing function. Geomorphologists observe that deltas are among the most dynamic landforms on Earth, yet their changes are typically gentle. They expand through accumulation rather than force. You don't need to picture branching paths clearly. You can think of release instead, motion easing into rest. If your thoughts drift here, let them. Deltas are about slowing down. They exist where urgency dissolves. Earth creates these soft landforms where water learns to pause. They hold space between river and sea, not choosing one or the other completely. You're welcome to pause too, without deciding where your attention needs to go next. Earth's atmosphere gradually thins as it rises, fading rather than ending. There is no line where air suddenly stops and space begins. Density decreases slowly, molecule by molecule. This gradient allows spacecraft to pass through without crossing a boundary. It allows satellites to skim gently through upper traces of air. Transition is smooth. Physicists describe layers troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, but these are conceptual tools, not walls. The air itself does not recognize divisions. You don't need to imagine height or emptiness. You can think of gentleness instead, how Earth avoids sharp edges even at its outermost reach. If this becomes vague, that's appropriate. Gradients are difficult to hold clearly. They're meant to soften rather than define. Earth does not end abruptly anywhere. Surface becomes sky. Sky becomes space. Everything fades rather than stops. You're allowed to let your awareness fade in the same way, not disappearing, just thinning, becoming lighter while the planet continues holding air, water, land, and time together quietly, without expectation. Earth's mangrove forests grow where land and sea overlap, in water that is neither fully fresh nor fully salty. Their roots spread outward and downward, branching into the water like slow, patient thoughts. These roots don't hurry to anchor. They explore gradually, finding stability through flexibility rather than force. Mangroves rise and fall with the tides. Twice a day, water lifts around their trunks and then recedes. Nothing resists this movement. The trees are built to accept it. Biologists know that mangroves protect coastlines by absorbing wave energy and trapping sediment. Storms lose strength as they pass through these forests. Land is held in place not by walls, but by living structure that bends. You don't need to imagine tangled roots clearly. It's enough to sense that Earth creates buffers that feel soft rather than rigid. Protection through patience. If this image fades, let it. Mangroves thrive without being seen. They hold space quietly, supporting water, land, and life without asking for attention. Earth seems to prefer systems that yield instead of resisting. Strength expressed as gentleness. You're allowed to rest in that idea, or let it drift past like a tide. Earth's open oceans are often calmer than expected. Away from storms and coastlines, waves spread out and lower themselves naturally. The surface rolls slowly, each movement blending into the next. Sailors have long noted that the open sea feels less chaotic than the edges. Energy disperses over distance. Sharpness smooths itself out. Below the surface, this calm deepens, light fades, temperature stabilizes, water moves in broad, slow currents that take years or centuries to complete a single loop. Oceanographers describe gyres' vast circulating systems that turn endlessly without rushing. They don't seek destinations. They simply continue. You don't need to imagine horizon or expanse. You can think instead of continuity, motion that never demands resolution. If your awareness drifts here, that fits. The open ocean doesn't provide landmarks for the mind to hold on to. It invites letting go. Earth includes places where nothing changes quickly. where sameness itself becomes calming. You're free to let your thoughts become wide and unstructured here, or to let them dissolve entirely. Earth's fungi form networks beneath forests, fields, and grasslands, connecting roots through fine threads called mycelium. These threads are thinner than hair, spreading through soil in every direction, often covering vast areas. Through these networks, nutrients and signals move slowly from one plant to another. A tree with excess resources may share them. A struggling plant may receive support. Nothing is exchanged urgently. Mycologists describe this as a communication system, but it doesn't resemble conversation. There are no messages, no intent, only response. You don't need to imagine underground webs clearly. You can think of quiet connection instead, support that exists without awareness. If this idea fades, that's fine. These networks operate best when unnoticed. They do not require recognition to function. Earth supports cooperation that doesn't announce itself, systems that share, pause, and adjust without needing to be named. You're allowed to rest inside a world where help can be quiet and invisible. Earth's sand is shaped by countless small collisions. Grains tumble, scrape, and brush against one another, rounding edges over time. Sharp fragments become smooth not through force, but through repetition. On beaches, deserts, and riverbeds, sand shifts constantly. Wind lifts it briefly, water carries it a short distance, gravity settles it again. Geologists know that sand grains often carry long histories once part of mountains, shells, or distant reefs. Their journeys are slow, marked by pauses rather than progress. You don't need to track where any grain has been. Sand doesn't remember. It only responds to immediate conditions. If your thoughts scatter here, that feels appropriate. Sand never stays arranged for long, or it rearranges itself without consequence. Earth allows even its smallest pieces to take their time becoming gentle. Roughness is not permanent. Nothing is required to stay sharp. You're free to let your own edges soften too, without effort, simply by resting. Earth's twilight lasts longer than we often notice. Before night fully arrives, light lingers in the atmosphere, scattering and bending. Colours deepen. Contrast fades. This extended transition exists because air wraps the planet, catching sunlight even after the sun has dipped below the horizon. Day does not end suddenly, it eases away. Astronomers measure different phases of twilight, but lived experience doesn't need labels. It feels like a slowing, a letting go. You don't need to watch the sky to be part of this. Twilight happens everywhere at once, touching oceans, forests, cities, and quiet rooms alike. If your awareness dims here, let it. Twilight is designed for dimming. It invites rest without insisting on sleep. Earth creates these gentle in-between states repeatedly: dawn, dusk, low tide, early evening, moments that don't require decisions. You're welcome to stay awake within them, or to drift beyond them. The planet will continue offering soft transitions, holding light and dark together patiently. Long after attention fades, Earth's alpine meadows exist in places where conditions are brief and forgiving only for a short time each year. Snow retreats slowly, soil warms just enough. Plants respond without haste, growing low to the ground, conserving energy, flowering when the moment allows. Nothing here expects permanence. The season arrives, unfolds, and then fades again. Roots remain, seeds wait. Botanists note how these plants complete their cycles efficiently, but efficiency here is quiet, not driven. Growth happens because conditions permit it, not because anything is pushing forward. You don't need to imagine mountains or altitude. You can think instead of timing how Earth allows life to exist in narrow windows without pressure to extend them. If this idea fades, let it. Alpine systems are accustomed to long periods of rest. They don't mind waiting. Earth supports life that blooms briefly and then releases its hold, trusting that another season will come. You're allowed to trust time in the same way, without needing to stay alert. Earth's rocks slowly release heat stored from the planet's formation. This geothermal warmth rises gently through the crust, warming ground, water, and air in subtle ways. In many places, it never announces itself at all. Hot springs form where this heat meets water and an open path to the surface. Steam drifts upward, minerals dissolve and settle. The exchange is steady, not forceful. Geophysicists measure this heat flow carefully, but the heat itself does not seek release. It moves because temperature differences exist, nothing more. You don't need to picture steam or color. It's enough to know that Earth still carries warmth from its beginnings, sharing it slowly, without depletion. If this detail becomes indistinct, that's fine. Deep heat is meant to be background. It supports without drawing attention. Earth holds energy quietly, releasing it at a pace that never overwhelms the surface. You're free to rest above it, knowing warmth exists even when it isn't felt. Earth's night winds often calm after sunset. As the ground cools, air settles, movement softens. The atmosphere rearranges itself without instruction. In valleys and open fields, cooler air drifts downward and pools gently. Above it, warmer layers rest. The night organizes itself slowly, creating stillness without silence. Meteorologists describe these patterns, but the air doesn't follow rules. It simply responds to temperature and gravity, adjusting minute by minute. You don't need to notice the change. Your body often does it for you, easing into rest as the air becomes quieter. If your awareness drifts here, that's natural. Night specializes in low stimulation. It reduces contrast and motion without effort. Earth prepares darkness gently. It does not arrive abruptly. The planet makes space for rest long before sleep is required. You're allowed to follow that rhythm loosely or not at all. The night will remain calm either way. Earth's migratory paths are traced without maps. Birds, fish, and mammals move across continents and oceans guided by instinct, memory, and subtle cues in light and magnetism. The journeys repeat without needing to be reinvented. Most migration is unhurried. Animals pause, they rest. They respond to weather and food availability rather than schedules. Ecologists observe that these movements distribute life gently, preventing strain in any single place. Arrival and departure balance one another. You don't need to imagine distance or effort. You can think instead of trust movement that happens because it always has. If this becomes vague, that's appropriate. Migration is repetitive. It doesn't depend on novelty. Earth supports motion that includes rest as part of the journey. Nothing needs to arrive quickly. Nothing needs to stay forever. You're welcome to remain where you are now without preparing to go anywhere else. Movement will happen when it needs to, without planning. Earth's deep past stretches far beyond any single record. Before plants, before animals, before oceans took their current shape, the planet cooled, shifted, and settled into itself. Most of this history left no clear trace. Rocks melted and solidified, atmospheres changed, water arrived and stayed. Geologists reconstruct parts of this story, but much of it remains unknowable, not lost, simply never recorded. Earth does not preserve everything. You don't need to imagine this vastness clearly. It's too large to hold all at once. It exists comfortably beyond focus. If this thought dissolves, let it. Deep time is meant to be felt as steadiness, not detail. Earth does not depend on memory to continue. It moves forward without carrying every moment with it. You're allowed the same freedom. You don't need to remember what came before in order to rest now. The planet continues cooling, warming, turning, holding whether or not anyone is paying attention. You're free to drift alongside that motion, awake or asleep, knowing nothing is being asked of you, and nothing needs to be held. Earth's canyons appear dramatic when seen from above, but their formation is defined by patience rather than force. A river begins as a small line of water, finding its way across stone. Over time, that line deepens, not by rushing, but by repeating the same motion again and again. Water carries fine particles. Those particles brush against rock. Tiny amounts are removed, then more again. Centuries pass, millennia pass. Space opens slowly where water has been allowed to return. Geologists describe canyons as records of persistence. The river does not push, it simply continues. Gravity does the rest. You don't need to picture steep walls or great depth. You can think instead of continuity how something gentle, given enough time, reshapes even the hardest material. If this thought drifts away, that's fine. Canyons themselves don't insist on being held in mind. They exist quietly, holding time in their layers whether or not anyone looks down into them. Earth seems comfortable letting slow repetition do the work. Nothing needs to prove its strength. You're allowed to rest with that idea, or let it pass without staying. Earth's plains of ice, far from mountains or edges, feel almost motionless. Ice sheets stretch outward, smooth and unbroken, reflecting light softly. At first glance, nothing appears to move. Yet beneath this stillness, ice flows. Under its own weight, it spreads outward by a few centimeters a day. This movement is silent, steady, and difficult to detect without instruments. Glaciologists measure this flow, but the ice itself does not notice time. It responds to pressure and temperature alone, reshaping the land beneath it with gentle insistence. You don't need to imagine cold or distance. You can think instead of steadiness motion that exists without urgency, change that doesn't interrupt rest. If this becomes vague, let it. Ice teaches through repetition. It moves, pauses, and moves again without announcement. Earth holds some of its calmest processes in its coldest places. Stillness and motion coexist without conflict. You're free to let that balance support you now. Earth's hills are often overlooked because they do not command attention the way mountains do. They rise gently, curve softly, and settle back into the land without sharp edges. Their shapes are the result of long erosion rather than sudden uplift. Rain flows down their slopes repeatedly. Soil creeps downward, grain by grain. Vegetation stabilizes the surface, slowing change even further. Geomorphologists know that hills represent a kind of equilibrium land worn down toward a state of ease. Nothing pushes upward strongly, nothing collapses. You don't need to picture rolling landscapes clearly. You can sense the idea of gentleness instead, how Earth allows its surfaces to relax over time. If this detail fades, that's appropriate. Hills are meant to be background. They don't ask for admiration. Earth creates many forms that do not demand attention to function well. Supportive shapes, quiet rises and falls. You're allowed to exist in a similar way now present without needing to stand out, resting without explanation. Earth's night oceans glow faintly at times with bioluminescence. Tiny organisms release light when disturbed, producing soft flashes or steady glimmers. The effect is subtle, often visible only in complete darkness. This light is not meant to signal or impress. It arises from simple chemical reactions inside living cells. Energy is released as light because conditions allow it. Marine biologists study these organisms, but the glow itself has no purpose beyond happening. It appears briefly and fades again. You don't need to imagine bright color or motion. You can think instead of gentleness light that exists without heat, without urgency, without needing to be seen. If this idea dissolves, that's fine. Bioluminescence is fleeting by nature. It leaves no trace. Earth includes moments of quiet beauty that do not repeat on command. They appear, then disappear, without asking to be remembered. You're allowed to let moments pass in the same way noticed or unnoticed, complete either way. Earth's long slopes of sediment beneath the oceans, called continental rises, descend so gradually they are hard to perceive. There is no sharp drop, no sudden edge. Land simply eases into deep water. Sediment drifts down from continents, settling slowly on these slopes. Fine particles take years to reach the bottom. Nothing arrives all at once. Marine geologists describe these areas as accumulations of calm places where energy dissipates and material finally comes to rest. Motion relaxes here. You don't need to imagine darkness or scale. You can sense the idea of easing how movement eventually becomes stillness without effort. If this fades, let it. The ocean floor does not mind being unknown. It supports the surface quietly, without recognition. Earth avoids abrupt endings whenever it can. Edges soften, slopes extend, transitions replace stops. You're welcome to follow that pattern now, letting thoughts thin, letting attention slope gently away rather than stopping suddenly. The planet continues beneath you and around you, distributing weight, motion, and time evenly. Nothing is required from you. You don't need to stay awake for what comes next, and you don't need to fall asleep either. Earth will keep moving gently, holding everything it carries, including you, with the same patient consistency. Whether you're listening closely, loosely, or not at all. Earth's salt flats form where water arrives, rests for a while, and then leaves again. Lakes spread shallowly, reflecting the sky without distortion. Sunlight warms the surface. Water evaporates slowly, molecule by molecule, leaving minerals behind in thin, quiet layers. What remains looks still and empty, but it is the result of many gentle arrivals and departures, rainfall, seasonal floods, long dry periods. Nothing is abrupt. Nothing is erased completely. Geochemists explain how salts crystallize as water retreats, forming patterns that repeat and overlap. But you don't need the explanation. You can think instead of balance how Earth allows water to come and go without needing to hold on to it. If this image blurs, that's fine. Salt flats themselves blur distance and depth. Horizons stretch, edges soften. Earth creates places where nothing insists on growing or changing quickly, where waiting is not a pause, but the natural state. You're welcome to rest in that sense of openness, or let it drift away like heat rising from the ground. Earth's rivers beneath the ice continue flowing through the winter. Even when surfaces freeze solid, water moves below, insulated by ice and earth. Temperature stabilizes. Motion becomes quieter, but it does not stop. This under-ice flow protects life. Fish remain active. Nutrients circulate. The river carries on without needing light or open air. Hydrologists know that ice acts as a blanket, slowing heat loss and reducing turbulence. The system becomes calmer, not dormant. You don't need to imagine cold or darkness. You can think instead of continuity, how processes persist gently, even when outward signs disappear. If this thought fades, let it. Much of Earth's activity happens out of sight. It does not depend on observation. Earth rarely stops something entirely. It changes the form. It quiets the surface. Movement continues underneath. You're allowed to do the same now, letting outer attention settle while something steadier keeps moving quietly within. Earth's hillsides experience a process called soil creep, where ground moves downhill almost too slowly to detect. Grains shift under gravity, roots grow and decay, water swells and contracts the soil with changing moisture. Over years and decades, this movement reshapes slopes gently. Fence posts tilt, trees lean slightly, then correct themselves. Nothing collapses. Geomorphologists measure this motion in millimeters per year. It is persistent, not dramatic. change without urgency. You don't need to picture sloping land. You can think instead of adjustment how Earth allows small corrections to happen continuously, preventing the need for sudden change. If this becomes indistinct, that's natural. Soil creep specializes in being unnoticed. It works best when ignored. Earth redistributes weight patiently, letting gravity act without hurry. Pressure is released through time rather than force. You're free to release things the same way, not all at once, not deliberately, simply by resting while small shifts happen on their own. Earth's skies hold moisture even when no clouds are visible. Water vapor moves invisibly through the air, rising, cooling, and dispersing. Clouds appear only when conditions align just enough. Most of the time, moisture remains unseen, carried gently by wind. It does not announce itself. It waits. Atmospheric scientists track humidity carefully, but lived experience rarely requires that awareness. Your skin, your breath, your comfort respond automatically. You don't need to notice the air to be affected by it. It surrounds you either way. If this idea dissolves, that's fine. Invisible processes are meant to be background. They support without demanding attention. Earth relies on many such unseen movements: vapor, heat, pressure, all balancing one another quietly. You're allowed to let your thoughts become similarly diffuse now, present but not fixed, aware but not focused. Earth's oldest rocks have been transformed many times, melted, compressed, lifted, worn down. What remains is not a single story, but many layered ones softened together. Some rocks have travelled from deep inside the planet to the surface and back again. Others have remained near the top, weathering slowly. No path is preferred. Geologists identify ages through isotopes and structure, but the rocks themselves do not mark time. They respond to conditions and change shape accordingly. You don't need to imagine deep pressure or heat. You can think instead of acceptance, how Earth allows material to become something else without resistance. If this fades before it settles, let it. Deep processes are not meant to be held clearly. They exist comfortably beyond focus. Earth does not cling to its earlier forms. It transforms, releases, and continues without keeping score. You're allowed that same freedom now. You don't need to hold on to what you were thinking before or prepare for what comes next. The planet continues beneath you, reshaping slowly, supporting quietly, complete without attention. Whether you're awake, drifting, or already asleep, nothing is required of you. Earth's high mountain air holds less moisture and fewer particles than air closer to sea level. Light passes through it with slightly less scattering, making colours appear clearer, edges a bit softer. This clarity isn't sharp or demanding. It's simply the result of thinner air doing less. At these elevations, sounds also travel differently. They fade more quickly, absorbed by distance and open space. Voices don't linger. Wind becomes the most consistent presence. Physiologists know that bodies respond gradually to altitude, adjusting breathing and circulation over time. Nothing needs to happen immediately. Adaptation unfolds quietly, step by step. You don't need to imagine peaks or exertion. You can think instead of lightness, how Earth offers places where pressure eases slightly, without removing support. If this image thins and drifts, that's fine. High air feels that way too. It doesn't hold tightly. Earth includes regions where everything feels a little less dense, a little more spacious. You're allowed to let your thoughts take on that same quality, now lighter, less attached, free to pass through. Earth's estuaries form where rivers meet the sea, blending fresh and salt water into something intermediate. Currents slow, sediment settles, nutrients gather. These places are constantly changing and tides move in and out. Salinity shifts. Life adapts without complaint. Marine biologists describe estuaries as productive, but productivity here is gentle. Growth happens because conditions are supportive. not because anything is pushed to expand. You don't need to picture mudflats or grasses clearly. You can think instead of mixing how Earth allows different systems to overlap without conflict. If this idea fades, let it. Estuaries are transitional by nature. They don't stay fixed long enough to demand attention. Earth seems comfortable where definitions blur. Fresh becomes salty. River becomes ocean. Neither needs to disappear. You're allowed to remain in a similar in-between space now, not fully focused, not fully asleep, held without needing to choose. Earth's rocks slowly exchange elements with air and water through weathering. Oxygen reacts with minerals. Water dissolves small amounts of material. Changes happen at the surface first, then deepen over time. This chemical conversation is quiet and continuous. No single reaction matters much. Together, they soften landscapes and feed soils. Geochemists describe these processes in detail, but the essence is simple. Exposure leads to change. Change leads to balance. You don't need to imagine reactions or formulas. You can think instead of gentleness how Earth allows even its hardest materials to relax over time. If this thought dissolves, that's appropriate. Weathering is repetitive. It doesn't need to be followed closely. Earth doesn't preserve sharpness indefinitely. Edges round, surfaces mellow. Everything becomes easier to carry. You're free to let your own edges soften now, without effort or intention, simply by resting while time does its quiet work. Earth's migratory winds over oceans form steady patterns that repeat year after year. Trade winds move predictably. Monsoons arrive and retreat. Air follows paths shaped by rotation and temperature rather than choice. Sailors once relied on these winds, trusting that they would return in familiar ways. That trust was based on repetition, not certainty. Patterns held, not perfectly, but well enough. Climatologists study how these systems shift slowly over decades. Change happens, but it is layered and gradual. Nothing reverses abruptly. You don't need to picture maps or arrows. You can think instead of reliability movement that doesn't surprise, even when it evolves. If this idea fades into the background, that's fitting. Reliable things often do. They work best when they're not constantly noticed. Earth offers many such rhythms, dependable without being rigid. You're allowed to lean on that steadiness now, or let it pass beneath awareness while you rest. Earth's surface is covered with countless small depressions that collect water briefly after rain. Puddles form, they reflect light, they disappear again as water seeps away or evaporates. These temporary pools support life in short bursts. Insects arrive, seeds sprout, moments happen, then end. Ecologists note that impermanence is essential here. The puddle does not need to last to be complete. Its brief existence is enough. You don't need to imagine rain or reflections clearly. You can think instead of sufficiency, how Earth allows short moments to matter without needing to extend them. If this thought fades quickly, that's fine. Puddles themselves fade quickly. They leave no obligation behind. Earth does not insist that everything endure. Some things appear, serve, and vanish without consequence. You're allowed the same ease now. You don't need to hold on to this moment, or the next one. The planet continues around you, collecting, releasing, balancing, whether attention stays or drifts away. You're welcome to remain awake, to wander gently in thought, or to slip into sleep. Nothing is required. Everything needed is already being carried quietly and kindly by the Earth itself. Earth's deep lakes hold water that has been sheltered from surface change for a very long time. Below the upper layers that warm and cool with the seasons, deeper water remains nearly the same temperature year after year. This stability isn't imposed. It emerges naturally from depth and density. In some lakes, the deepest water has not mixed with the surface for decades, even centuries. It rests there, quiet and contained, holding dissolved minerals and faint traces of history. Nothing disturbs it unless conditions truly change. Limnologists study these layers carefully, but the water itself does not anticipate disturbance. It remains calm because it can. Gravity and temperature make it so. You don't need to imagine darkness or depth clearly. You can think instead of protection, how Earth creates spaces where change arrives very slowly, if at all. If this idea settles and then drifts away, that's fine. Deep water is meant to be background. It supports without being seen. Earth includes places where nothing is asked to respond quickly. You're allowed to let part of yourself rest in that same way now, steady and undisturbed beneath lighter movement. Earth's morning fog forms when air cools just enough for moisture to condense. Tiny droplets gather and suspend themselves, softening outlines and absorbing sound. The world becomes quieter without becoming still. Fog does not arrive everywhere at once. It forms in low places, near water, or where night cooling lingers. It drifts, thins, and lifts without effort. Meteorologists can explain the conditions precisely, but fog itself feels unplanned. It responds to balance rather than intention. You don't need to picture reduced visibility. You can think instead of gentleness how Earth sometimes lowers contrast, making everything less demanding to perceive. If this fades, let it. Fog is temporary by nature. It exists to soften, not to remain. Earth offers moments like this regularly, times when clarity is not required. You're welcome to let your own thoughts become similarly diffuse, without needing to sharpen them. Earth's stones on riverbeds and beaches become smooth through countless small touches. Water moves them slightly. Other stones brush against them. Edges wear down through repetition rather than force. No single contact matters much. It's the accumulation that changes shape. Roughness gives way to curves gradually, without any moment of decision. Geologists know that the smoothest stones have travelled the longest or rested in motion the longest. Their softness is a record of time, not of weakness. You don't need to imagine tumbling or sound. You can think instead of permission how Earth allows things to become easier to hold over time. If this detail blurs, that's appropriate. Stone smoothing is repetitive and quiet. It doesn't require focus. Earth seems comfortable letting contact soften what was once sharp. You're allowed to let the same thing happen now without effort, simply by resting. Earth's air pressure changes gently with weather systems passing overhead. A high-pressure system settles, air descends slowly, skies often clear. A low-pressure system arrives, air rises, clouds gather, rain may follow. These shifts are gradual. Bodies often sense them before they are named a heaviness, a lightness, a subtle change in comfort. Nothing demands response. Atmospheric scientists track these movements across continents, but lived experience doesn't need that awareness. The body adjusts quietly. You don't need to notice the pressure now. It's already being managed by the air around you. If this thought dissolves, that's fine. Pressure is meant to be background. It holds everything gently without asking to be felt. Earth maintains balance through slow, continuous adjustment. You're free to let go of any need to adjust consciously. The environment is already doing that work for you. Earth's night insects create a soft layer of sound that rises and falls without pattern or expectation. Crickets, cicadas, and other small lives produce rhythms that overlap and drift. No single sound leads. No chorus needs to synchronize perfectly. These sounds often fade into the background, noticed only when they stop. They don't communicate urgency. They simply exist as part of the night. Entomologists study these behaviors, but the insects themselves are not performing. They respond to temperature and light, repeating familiar actions. You don't need to listen for them. Even if you can't hear anything at all, the idea remains that Earth fills its quiet hours with gentle continuity rather than silence. If your awareness drifts here and then away, that fits. Background sound is meant to support, not to hold attention. Earth does not leave space empty, it fills it softly, evenly, without insistence. You're welcome to let your own inner space be filled in the same way now, not with thoughts that need following, but with something steady and low, something that doesn't require participation. The planet continues around you holding pressure, smoothing stone, lifting fog, resting water, all without instruction, all without hurry. You don't need to stay with any of it. You don't need to remember. You can simply remain here, awake or drifting, while Earth keeps quiet company for you, as it always has. Earth's basalt plains form where lava once spread thinly and cooled without urgency. Instead of piling up, molten rock flowed outward, filling low places and smoothing the surface. As it cooled, it cracked into broad, even shapes, not sharp or chaotic, just quietly ordered. These landscapes often feel expansive and calm. Nothing rises suddenly, nothing drops away. The ground holds a steady, open posture. Volcanologists know that basalt cools relatively quickly compared to other rock types, yet even this quickness unfolds over days, weeks, and years. Heat leaves slowly enough for crystals to settle into place. Order appears without instruction. You don't need to imagine heat or movement. You can think instead of settling how Earth allows energy to spread out until it no longer presses anywhere in particular. If this image fades, that's fine. Basalt plains are not meant to stand out. They exist as quiet foundations, carrying whatever rests on them without comment. Earth often chooses wide calm over narrow intensity. You're allowed to let your attention do the same now, spreading gently, thinning, resting. Earth's spring water travels long distances underground before reaching the surface. Rain filters downward through soil and rock, moving slowly along paths shaped long ago. Sometimes this journey takes years, sometimes centuries. When the water finally emerges, it does so without force, a steady flow, a consistent temperature. No surprise. Hydrologists trace these systems carefully, but the water itself is unconcerned with timing. It moves because gravity and pressure guide it, not because it is meant to arrive anywhere specific. You don't need to imagine caves or channels. Most groundwater travels through spaces too small to see, slipping between grains, pausing, then continuing. If this thought becomes hazy, let it. Underground water is accustomed to darkness and distance. It does not rush toward awareness. Earth holds reserves that move patiently beneath the surface, supporting life above without being seen. You're allowed to let support exist without watching it, without monitoring it, simply trusting that it's there. Earth's tidal flats appear and disappear twice each day. When the tide retreats, broad stretches of sand and mud are exposed. When it returns, water covers them again, smoothing everything evenly. Nothing resists this rhythm. Burrows fill and empty, channels shift slightly. Life adapts to coming and going without effort. Marine ecologists describe these places as highly dynamic, yet the change feels gentle. The pace is predictable. The transitions are slow enough to follow without strain. You don't need to picture birds or shells or footprints. You can think instead of repetition how Earth revisits the same state again and again without boredom. If this fades from focus, that's appropriate. Tides do not require attention to arrive on time. They respond to the moon whether anyone is watching or not. Earth seems comfortable returning to familiar places repeatedly. Nothing is lost by revisiting. You're free to revisit rest as many times as you need, without explanation. Earth's atmosphere carries fine dust from one continent to another. Tiny particles lift into the air, travel vast distances, and settle quietly elsewhere. No single grain knows where it's going. Some dust nourishes distant forests. Some becomes part of ocean sediments. Some rests briefly, then lifts again. Atmospheric scientists track these movements, but the dust itself responds only to wind and gravity. Its journey is indirect, unplanned, and complete at every stage. You don't need to imagine maps or movement. You can think instead of connection, how Earth links distant places without effort, sharing material gently over time. If this idea drifts away, let it. Long-distance processes are not meant to be held clearly. They work best in the background. Earth does not isolate its parts. It allows slow exchange everywhere. You're allowed to feel part of something broad and quiet now, without needing to define how. Earth's oldest trees grow more slowly as they age. Their rings narrow, their height stabilizes. Growth shifts from expansion to maintenance. These trees focus on holding what they have rather than reaching further. They repair damage. They balance weight. They endure weather without urgency. Dendrochronologists study these patterns to understand climate history, but the trees themselves are not recording anything intentionally. They're simply responding to conditions year after year. You don't need to imagine bark or branches. You can think instead of sufficiency, how Earth allows living things to stop striving without stopping entirely. If this fades into the background, that fits. Old growth is quiet. It does not advertise its presence. Earth includes stages where effort softens naturally, where continuation matters more than increase. You're allowed to exist in such a stage now, even briefly resting without needing to progress. Earth's plate boundaries beneath the oceans are marked by slow spreading rather than collision. At mid-ocean ridges, magma rises gently, cools, and becomes new crust. The seafloor moves apart by centimeters each year. This process is steady and nearly silent. No one feels it. No one needs to. Marine geologists describe this as renewal, but it doesn't feel like starting over. It's more like quiet replacement, old material drifting outward as new material takes its place. You don't need to imagine depth or heat. You can think instead of continuity, how Earth refreshes itself without interruption. If this idea dissolves, that's fine. Deep processes are not meant to stay in awareness. They happen whether or not they're named. Earth maintains itself slowly, without urgency, without pause. You're free to rest alongside that maintenance, not helping, not hindering, simply being carried. Earth's gentle slopes beneath forests move water sideways through soil. Rain rarely travels straight down. It spreads, following roots and layers, feeding plants along the way. This lateral flow prevents flooding and distributes moisture evenly. Nothing rushes, nothing accumulates too much at once. Soil scientists study these pathways, but the water itself responds only to gravity and resistance. It chooses the easiest route, not the fastest. You don't need to imagine rain or roots. You can think instead of ease, how Earth encourages flow that avoids strain. If this becomes indistinct, let it. Ease is difficult to hold clearly. It's meant to be felt rather than examined. Earth prefers paths that feel gentle to follow. You're allowed to take such a path now, letting attention move where it wants, or settle where it already is. Earth's night clouds often drift without changing shape dramatically. They move slowly, reflecting faint light from below or from the moon. Edges soften, details blur. Unlike daytime clouds, they don't draw the eye. They exist quietly, unnoticed unless someone happens to look up. Meteorologists can identify them by altitude and composition, but lived experience doesn't require that knowledge. They're simply there, moving calmly across the dark. You don't need to picture the sky. You can think instead of presence without demand things that exist fully without asking to be seen. If your awareness fades here, that's fine. Night clouds are accustomed to passing without witnesses. Earth fills even its quietest hours with gentle motion. Nothing is abandoned to emptiness. You're welcome to let yourself be held in that gentle continuity now. Earth's long shore currents move parallel to coastlines, redistributing sand evenly over time. They don't push inward or outward strongly. They slide along, adjusting shape without erasing it. Beaches rebuild themselves this way after storms. Material returns gradually. Balance re-establishes itself without planning. Coastal scientists observe this with instruments, but the current itself is simple water moving where energy is lowest. You don't need to imagine waves. You can think instead of repair how Earth corrects gently rather than forcefully. If this thought drifts away, let it. Repair does not need to be supervised. It happens naturally when time is allowed. Earth trusts time to restore what is disturbed. You're allowed to trust it too, without staying alert for signs of progress. Earth's surface cools slightly under cloud cover, not abruptly, but enough to soften temperature extremes. Clouds reflect sunlight during the day and trap warmth at night. They smooth the difference between hot and cold. Climatologists describe this as moderation, but it doesn't feel like control. It feels like cushioning. You don't need to notice the temperature now. Your body already responds without instruction. If this idea fades, that's appropriate. Moderation is meant to be background. Earth layers many such small softenings together: air, water, cloud, soil, until sharpness becomes rare. You're allowed to be part of that softened space now. Earth continues beneath you and around you, spreading, settling, renewing, easing. Nothing here requires your attention. Nothing needs to be finished. You can remain awake if you like. You can drift. You can sleep. The planet does not change its rhythm in response. It keeps quiet company either way, steady and complete, holding you gently as it always has. Earth's slow rivers beneath wetlands often divide and rejoin without urgency. Water spreads out across flat ground, moving sideways as much as forward. Instead of carving deep channels, it drifts, pauses, and finds new paths with each season. Plants grow into this movement rather than resisting it. Stems bend, roots anchor lightly. Nothing insists on permanence. Hydrologists describe these systems as diffusive energy spreads instead of concentrating. Floods soften as water disperses, sediment settles evenly. Change becomes manageable simply by slowing down. You don't need to picture reeds or flowing water clearly. You can think instead of space how Earth gives water room to move so it doesn't need to push. If this idea fades, that's fine. Wetland rivers are not meant to be followed closely. They exist to reduce strain, not to draw attention. Earth often solves imbalance by widening the field rather than increasing force. You're allowed to let your thoughts widen too, loosening their grip, resting in spaciousness without needing direction. Earth's mineral springs emerge where underground water meets heat and dissolved rock. As water rises, pressure eases. Gases escape quietly. Minerals settle out, sometimes forming gentle terraces over long periods. The water does not hurry. It flows steadily, often at the same temperature year after year. No season needs to be checked. No adjustment is required. Geochemists study these deposits to understand Earth's interior, but the springs themselves respond only to gradients heat moving toward cool. Pressure equalizing naturally. You don't need to imagine steam or color. You can think instead of release how Earth allows what is held inside to emerge slowly, without disruption. If this thought dissolves, let it. Springs have always flowed whether anyone watched or not. They don't depend on recognition. Earth includes many outlets that work gently, preventing build-up without drama. You're allowed to trust that quiet release is possible without effort, simply by resting. Earth's long grass steps move as a whole when wind passes through. Individual blades bend, but the field remains intact. Motion spreads evenly, creating waves that appear and fade without consequence. There is no leader here, no central point of control. The movement happens because each part responds in a simple way to the same conditions. Ecologists note that grasses evolved flexibility rather than rigidity. Fire passes quickly. Grazing removes only what can regrow. The system recovers through repetition. You don't need to imagine a horizon or sky. You can think instead of resilience how Earth builds strength by allowing movement instead of resisting it. If this image becomes indistinct, that's appropriate. Grasslands are meant to be felt as continuity rather than detail. Earth often prefers solutions that involve yielding rather than holding firm. You're allowed to yield a little now, letting thoughts bend and pass without breaking concentration or needing to decide anything. Earth's deep ocean trenches are places of immense pressure, yet even there, change happens slowly. Water presses down evenly. Temperature remains stable. Movement is minimal. Life that exists at these depths adapts quietly. Cells adjust. Structures strengthen. Nothing rushes to evolve. Oceanographers explore these regions with care, but the trenches themselves are not hostile. They are simply consistent. Conditions remain steady enough for persistence. You don't need to imagine darkness or depth. You can think instead of constancy environments where nothing fluctuates sharply enough to demand attention. If this thought fades, let it. Extremes that are stable become background. They lose their drama. Earth holds even its most intense conditions within long-term balance. You're allowed to feel held in a similar way, now supported by consistency rather than alertness. Earth's early mornings often carry a brief stillness before daily movement resumes. Air settles. Birdsong may begin softly. Light arrives gradually, without contrast. This pause is not a reset. Nothing stopped overnight. It's simply a moment where activity is less layered. Meteorologists sometimes call this a transition period, but lived experience doesn't require a name. It feels like space opening briefly before filling again. You don't need to be awake for it. You don't need to notice it happening. The planet moves through this softness whether or not anyone is present to observe it. If your awareness drifts here, that fits. Transitions are easier to miss than arrivals. Earth offers many such moments: low tide, early dusk, late night where nothing new is required and nothing old needs attention. You're welcome to remain in one of those moments now, awake or asleep, focused or drifting. The planet does not ask you to participate. It continues its gentle adjustments, spreading motion evenly, holding space quietly, keeping company without expectation. You don't need to follow. You don't need to remember. Earth will continue doing what it has always done, slowly, patiently, and with room for rest, whether you're listening, half listening, or already somewhere softer and quieter than words. Earth's lava tubes form when flowing lava cools on the surface while still moving beneath. A crust hardens. The interior drains away slowly, leaving behind a hollow passage that remains long after the heat has gone. These spaces are not carved. They are revealed through quiet withdrawal. Inside lava tubes, temperatures tend to stay steady. Light fades quickly. Sound behaves differently. The space does not echo dramatically, it absorbs instead. Geologists study these formations to understand volcanic history, but the tubes themselves do not announce their presence. Many remain hidden, sealed for thousands of years until erosion opens an entrance. You don't need to imagine darkness or depth. You can think instead of emptiness created gently, space formed not by force, but by something leaving without hurry. If this idea drifts away, that's fine. Lava tubes are comfortable being forgotten. They exist without use, without attention. Earth sometimes creates shelter simply by letting go. You're allowed to let thoughts empty out in the same way now, without effort, without needing to replace them. Earth's rain shadows form where mountains slow moving air. As air rises, it cools and releases moisture. On the far side, it descends warmer and drier, carrying less water with it. This process is gradual. Clouds thin, rain becomes sparse, land adapts slowly over long distances. Climatologists describe this as a mechanical effect of terrain, but lived experience doesn't require explanation. It feels like a soft shift rather than a boundary. You don't need to picture slopes or peaks. You can think instead of moderation how Earth redistributes moisture without stopping movement entirely. If this fades from awareness, let it. Rain shadows are subtle by nature. They don't declare where one climate ends and another begins. Earth rarely draws sharp lines. It prefers gradients. You're allowed to exist in a gradient now, not fully alert, not fully asleep, held without definition. Earth's river islands appear and disappear as channels shift. Sediment accumulates. Plants take hold briefly. Water reroutes itself quietly around what has formed. Some islands last a single season. Others remain for centuries before eroding again. None are permanent, none are failures. Fluvial geomorphologists track these changes carefully, but the river itself does not mark success or loss. It adjusts shape according to flow and load. You don't need to imagine branching water. You can think instead of permission how Earth allows forms to exist temporarily without requiring them to endure. If this thought dissolves, that's appropriate. River islands are transitional. They come and go without ceremony. Earth makes room for brief forms that are complete while they last. You're allowed to be complete in this moment too, without needing to last or progress. Earth's long-term erosion works more through weather than through sudden events. Sun warms rock during the day. Night cools it again. Expansion and contraction create tiny fractures. Water enters, freezes, thaws. Fragments loosen gradually. Geologists describe this as mechanical weathering, but the name doesn't capture the feeling. It's not mechanical in the sense of force. It's repetitive, patient, and quiet. You don't need to imagine cracking stone. You can think instead of gentle persistence, how small changes repeated over time lead to softness. If this idea fades, let it. Weathering is not meant to be followed closely. It unfolds below the threshold of attention. Earth allows even its hardest surfaces to relax eventually. Nothing is asked to stay rigid forever. You're allowed the same kindness now. Earth's night air often carries scents more clearly than daytime air. Cool temperatures slow dispersion. Smells linger longer, moving gently rather than lifting away. Soil, plants, water, and distant places contribute faint traces. Nothing overwhelms. The air holds information softly. Atmospheric scientists explain this with physics, but experience doesn't need explanation. It simply feels different, quieter, more contained. You don't need to imagine specific smells. You can think instead of presence how Earth sometimes offers subtler versions of the same world. If this detail dissolves, that's fine. Scent is fleeting. It appears and fades without consequence. Earth varies its sensory landscape gently, offering softer versions when the day quiets. You're welcome to let your awareness soften in the same way now, not focusing, not resisting, simply resting as the planet continues its calm, steady rhythms around you. Earth's braided rivers spread into many shallow channels when sediment load is high and slopes are gentle. Water divides, rejoins, and divides again, never committing to a single path. Gravel bars appear briefly, then soften and slip away as flow changes. Nothing insists on being the main course. Hydrologists describe this as a response to balance water carrying more material than one channel can hold, so it widens instead. Energy disperses, movement becomes manageable. You don't need to picture crossing streams or stones. You can think instead of adaptability, how Earth solves excess by sharing it across space rather than pushing it forward. If this image blurs, that's fine. Braided rivers are meant to blur. They shift so often that sharp focus isn't useful. Earth allows movement to be distributed. Pressure eases when paths multiply. You're allowed to let your attention do the same now, spreading gently, not fixing itself to one line of thought. Earth's night temperatures fall more slowly than daytime temperatures rise. After sunset, stored warmth in soil, stone, and water releases gradually. The cooling is even, patient, and rarely abrupt. This gentle release keeps air moving softly, preventing sharp drops. Dew forms when conditions align. Frost waits for deeper cold. Meteorologists track these changes with precision, but bodies sense them without effort. Muscles loosen, breath deepens, awareness often softens. You don't need to notice the temperature now. The environment already adjusts on your behalf. If this thought fades, let it. Cooling is repetitive. It happens every evening, familiar enough to become background. Earth prepares rest without instruction. It lowers intensity gradually, making space for stillness without demanding sleep. You're welcome to follow that easing loosely, or not at all. Earth's pumice stones float for a time after volcanic eruptions, carried across oceans by currents and wind, filled with tiny air pockets. They drift lightly, sometimes traveling thousands of kilometers before becoming waterlogged and sinking. During this time, they host small communities. Algae settle, tiny organisms attach and move with them. A brief habitat forms and dissolves. Marine scientists study these rafts to understand dispersal, but the stones themselves are indifferent. They float because they can. They sink when they must. You don't need to imagine eruptions or distance. You can think instead of lightness how Earth allows even rock to rest on water for a while. If this detail dissolves, that's appropriate. Floating is temporary. Completion does not require permanence. Earth makes room for brief states that are complete in themselves. You're allowed to be light for a moment too, not anchored to outcomes, simply carried. Earth's soils release nutrients slowly as minerals, weather, and organic matter breaks down. This release is measured and steady, preventing sudden abundance or loss. Plants receive what they need over time, not all at once. Soil organisms regulate this pace. Bacteria, fungi, and small invertebrates work continuously, quietly. Nothing coordinates them. Balance emerges anyway. Soil scientists call this cycling, but it feels more like patience, availability without urgency, support without pressure. You don't need to imagine life beneath the surface. You can think instead of provision how Earth supplies what is needed gradually, reducing strain on everything involved. If this fades, let it. Background support rarely asks to be noticed. Earth specializes in systems that sustain without calling, see attention. You're allowed to receive support now without monitoring it, trusting that it continues whether you're alert or drifting. Earth's dusk birds often settle into quieter patterns as light fades. Calls shorten, movement slows, rest replaces travel. This shift is not commanded. It emerges from changing light and temperature. The environment cues rest without instruction. Ornithologists study these behaviors, but the birds themselves do not prepare. They respond, then settle. You don't need to imagine wings or sound. You can think instead of permission how Earth signals the activity can soften without stopping entirely. If this thought slips away, that's fine. Dusk is meant to pass unnoticed sometimes. Its work happens gently in the background. Earth layers these signals, cooling air, fading light, quieting movement until rest feels possible without being required. You're welcome to accept that invitation or ignore it. Awake or asleep, focused or drifting, nothing is expected of you. The planet continues its slow adjustments, dividing water, releasing warmth, floating stone, feeding soil, easing life into quieter rhythms. You don't need to follow. You don't need to remember. Earth keeps quiet company, steady and complete, holding space for you exactly as you are now. As we come toward the end of this long, quiet stretch together, nothing needs to change. There's no moment to reach, no summary to gather, no thought to hold on to. Everything you've heard can loosen and settle wherever it wants to. Earth will keep doing what it has been doing all along. Water will continue finding easy paths. Air will keep adjusting its pressure and temperature. Land will rest, shift, soften, and hold. All of it will happen whether anyone notices or not. You may feel very awake right now, or only partly here, or already close to sleep. You may remember fragments of what was said, or almost nothing at all. All of those states are completely fine. Nothing was meant to be captured or retained. If you're drifting, you don't need to correct it. If your thoughts are wandering somewhere unrelated, you don't need to follow them back. If you're resting in stillness, that's welcome too. The planet doesn't require a particular kind of attention from you. Earth has always carried life through moments of focus and moments of forgetting, through activity and rest, through light and darkness. It doesn't hurry either state along, and it doesn't judge one as better than the other. You're allowed to fall asleep now, if that's what's happening. You're allowed to stay awake, listening loosely, letting the words pass by without effort. You're allowed to turn this off and move on with your night. There is no wrong way to leave. The ground beneath you will remain steady. The air around you will keep its gentle balance. Time will continue unfolding at its own calm pace. Thank you for spending this quiet time here, in whatever way you did. I'll say goodbye now, softly, without urgency, knowing that Earth will keep you company long after the words fade. Holding everything it carries with the same patient kindness it always has,